welcome everyone. I'm here today with Honorable Colonel J.D. Martin, also known as Smuggler Jim, and we're here to talk about Key West Trading Company's current WeFunder investment opportunity. So I thought we'd start out, it's just kind of a general Q&A. So if you have any questions, go ahead and drop them in the Q&A section down below. And we're going to kind of start out with getting Jim to talk about how he got started with Key West Trading Company.
Yeah, so welcome everyone. Thank you for taking the time out to listen to the webinar and listen to me ramble for a few minutes about my history and what we're trying to accomplish here. I'm a fifth generation moonshiner from Kentucky, and I'm the first one in 5 generations to be legal. So that's why the tagline of our company is notoriously good for not getting caught. So, we obviously were on the illegal side since 1883. And back about 2007, 2008, I got the idea to go the legal route, which is a very, very difficult, long, arduous process. And it's extremely regulated, and that's overtaxed in our opinion. That's kind of why we were illegal for so long in our family to start with, was the kind of anti-government overtaxation. The government puts you in a position where you almost have to be illegal because when you're taxed on a product at like 70%, it's kind of like the Boston Tea Party, right? It's like if you charge proper taxes, then we would do it legally, but since you don't, we can't make a living off of it, so we'll do it illegally. But I digress on that. So I decided to take the route of going legal, and was also at the same time moving down to Key West. I'd already had a boat down there for about 5 years prior and been going there for quite a long time. So this started out to be kind of a retirement kind of a program. Is like, I'm just going to move down to Key West, sell my company in Texas, and just sell whiskey and ride around on a scooter delivering whiskey until the end of my days. Wasn't really prepared for how well it was going to do and how much it took off, and all the thankfully to people like yourself and people that support us. Now 8 years strong and having a product out in the market. And so we just took the whiskey approach first, being from Kentucky and being from bourbon country and being a purist. The Smuggler's whiskey is our bourbon, and operated that for quite a long time. And then seeing the need to bring some other products out, we came out with a vodka and a rum. And then our flagship product now, believe it or not, is an absinthe. Absinthe was banned in the United States for 95 years. It was invented in 1792 in Switzerland, so this is not a new thing. This has been around for a very, very long time, and it was a European drink. And living in Key West and being a historical person and enjoying history, I found out that Hemingway, Key West is a Hemingway town. His house is there, and he has a house in Havana, Cuba, was a fan of absinthe and drank absinthe. He started drinking absinthe when he was a war correspondent in France. Of course, it was illegal, so it was a bootleg kind of black market type of product. At one point, it was illegal in every country in the world except for Spain. And then it was legalized again in the United States after 95 years in 2007, but we were also kind of behind the rest of Europe. Most of the European countries have already, released the ban and, let it get back into production. So it kind of went along that route. My good friend and now is a part of our company, Alan Bishop, is our alchemist and our head distiller and one of the top distillers in the United States. And he's also a little crazy because he's not afraid to do whatever we want to do. I'll call him up with some crazy idea or something we want to do, and he's the guy. He's like, he'll go down the road with us. And when we developed the Death in the Afternoon, it was important for me historically, and we did a bunch of research and hired Philip Green to do research to get a period correct style of absinthe that Hemingway would have drank. We couldn't just pinpoint an actual product because it was illegal. So it's not like he drank X, type of absinthe. So we did a bunch of research and found out through Hemingway's writings, and not only his books, but in the Hemingway archives, which is his letters, his archived letters, where he wrote letters to his friends and people around the world. And he explained some things about how he got absinthe and when he started drinking it. And he was getting bottles. And in Cuba, in Havana, Cuba, he would go over to his house in Havana, for example. He described in a couple of his letters where there was a bootleg distillery there that was making absinthe. The Cuban government didn't really care, even though it was illegal. He would get some absinthe, and some other products that were banned in the United States, and put them on the boat on the Pilar, and then head over, towards Key West. And then on the way back, they would stop at an abandoned quay, drop off the illegal stuff, the absinthe and all that, in some bushes, and hide all that stuff, a little stash, and then come on into Key West, get the boat searched, when they go through customs. And then, a couple weeks later, they go on a fishing trip, and then they'd go back out to the abandoned quay on the fishing trip and pick up the booty, and then come back into, Key West undetected. So he would stockpile some absinthe, and he would write to his friends in Chicago and say, hey, he would tell them how he did that. He goes, I got these bottles of absinthe I brought back from Cuba, stashed here for when you guys come down and to hang out with us, at my house there in Key West. So that's how we were able to do the research and find out, the style and what type he was drinking, and all that kind of thing. And so we spent a lot of time on the formulation process. Absinthe is one of, if not the hardest spirit to make. We just did an absinthe podcast the other day with some of the top absinthe producers in the United States. That was kind of the general consensus that in the spirits industry, absinthe is one of the most difficult to make, if not the most difficult. It is volatile because of the way you drink it. When you add water to it, it looshes the product right before you drink it. So unlike a whiskey or a vodka or rum, where when you're proofing the spirit down, and you typically just add water to it to take it from 190, 180, 140 down to 90 or whatever you're trying to get to, you just simply add water to it. It's called proofing water. Well, absinthe, you can't do that. You can't just put water into it, or it'll ruin it. It'll loose it, and then make it ready to drink, but not what you want in the bottle. Because when you loose the absinthe to create the drink, you're breaking the molecules, the oil molecules in the botanicals, and creating an actual spirit itself. So the absinthe is a tincture. So you never drink absinthe straight. You always drink absinthe mixed, typically traditionally, with water and sugar. And the sugar is for taste. So imagine it's a medicine back in the old days when they didn't have pharmacies. Had snake oil salesmen and people that would make tinctures, or you'd make tinctures at home. Or in the case of absinthe, it was invented by a coven of witches in Switzerland, who were just basically using botanicals and the ethanol, to create these tinctures. And the little bottles, and imagine it as like a concentrate. And then you would go home, and then when you are ready to give your kids, trying to make cough syrup or whatever it is you're trying to do, you would add water and sugar to it, and the sugar is strictly for taste. So it's a spoonful of sugar makes the medicine go down. That's where they came from, is typically from tinctures. So it's just literally for taste, where now we have high fructose corn syrup and things like that, and cough syrup and other actual medications. So even if you think about whiskey, for example, whiskey is an antiseptic, just like in the old Westerns, you got a wound, a bullet wound, you pour the whiskey on the wound and you drink the whiskey, to kind of, to get you a little drunk so you don't feel them pulling the bullet out. Same type of thing, except it's botanical. So in absinthe particularly, there are three main ingredients that have to be in absinthe, which is star anise, fennel, and grand wormwood. Grand wormwood is what it gets its name from. The Latin name for it is Artemisia absinthium. It cannot be absinthe without having that product in it. So it cannot, once they pull that out of it, then it's just an anise drink. It's an ouzo or some other type of drink. It is not an absinthe at that point. There's a lot of confusion because absinthe was banned in the United States for so long. People still have the impression, we get it all the time on our social media, that absinthe is illegal still, or it's not the same as it was, back in the day, or, it's not the same as the European versions. I can assure you 100%, and other producers can assure you, and we can prove it, it is 100% made the way that it was made in the 1800s in Europe. We follow the same standards. I import all the botanicals from France. It's 100% authentic, and it's 100% legal. There's just misconceptions. They went back in 2006, 2007, before releasing the ban, and they did laboratory testing on bottles of absinthe from the 1800s. What they discovered, first of all, is that there was not as much thujone content in the old bottles of absinthe as people thought. So the modern standards, the modern absinthes produced today, are right in the same levels, legal levels, as what would have been produced in the late 1800s. So that was one of the misconceptions. We were able to measure that. And then another misconception was that it was a hallucinogenic, and it would destroy families, and it would cause you all this crazy harm. And the fact of the matter is that what's been proven now is that the stories about absinthe from the 1800s were true and accurate, that people were going crazy, people were going nuts. There was the absinthe murders, there was all these different things that happened. But what they found out in the laboratory is that there were high concentrations of lead. So people knew nothing about lead in the late 1800s, all the way up to like the 1950s and 60s. So they didn't have laboratories to test things. They didn't know it was harmful. So there was, when you get absinthe poisoning, at the kind of the symptoms of that is slowly going insane. So they uh, they were able to, pinpoint that, and say, oh my gosh, the thujon, that's what's causing everything, so let's make it illegal, let's ban it. It's a health hazard. And in the United States, the United States didn't do any testing or anything. We were just following suit with other countries in Europe that had deemed it unsafe, sort of France and Switzerland and those countries. And we were just following suit, going, hey, if these other countries have said that it was unsafe, then it must be unsafe and we're going to ban it. So that's the background of it. And then obviously in 2007, they were able to do testing, spectrography, and different type of laboratory tests, and then determine that you could not consume enough thujon from the absinthe to cause you any harm. You would die of ethanol poisoning, alcohol poisoning, long before you would have any effects of the thujon. Now, the thujon that is in absinthe too is not a hallucinogenic; it's a GABA inhibitor. So it's where absinthe gets its special, unique buzz, for lack of a better term. It's unlike any other spirit. It's its own thing, because you don't get drunk per se from drinking absinthe from the ethanol, because the thujon is having the opposite effect on the brain that the ethanol does. So instead of getting drunk, you get a euphoria. So that's what makes absinthe unique and special, and it's coming naturally from the botanicals that are in the absinthe itself. So that's the biggest thing that we run into, is the misconceptions and the thought that absinthe is harmful, or the thought that you're going to trip off of it or whatever. It's not even a hallucinogenic. You can't trip off of it anyway. It's not a psychedelic or hallucinogen. So we import all the botanicals from France. So it is, if you just look at the product itself, it is an all natural botanical based spirit. It's gluten free. It's non-GMO. If you looked at spirits in general, it is the best spirit that you can consume, because of all the benefits and things that come with the botanicals that are in the absinthe to start with. Obviously, the largest danger from drinking anything at all is the ethanol itself, and the fact that ethanol is a chemical solvent. So whether you're drinking vodka or rum or tequila or beer or wine or whatever, all of those are ethanol. That's the part that gets you drunk. So if you think of along the lines of, how do you like your ethanol flavored? Right? I like mine beer flavored. I like mine wine flavored. I like red wine flavored. I like whatever. Ultimately, it's all the same drink. The only thing that's different is the flavorings. So yeah, that's one of the things that we do, from a company, is that we deep dive into these products. Any company or anything I've ever involved in, we don't just do the thing because it was done that way forever, and that's how you do the thing. We ask the hard questions, we dig into it, we ask the experts, we do research, and then we produce our products with the utmost highest quality ingredients from the absolute best places you can get it. We source those botanicals from the regions in France where those botanicals have been harvested, since the 1700s. So it's from that soil. There's a big difference when you're sourcing a product, just like with wine or anything like that. The soil has an effect on the climate, the soil, that makes better wines or not so good wines. Same thing with botanicals, or something you would use in a spirit, if you're making a gin or anything else, is that different regions, some regions just don't grow those things as well. In the United States, we just, even in our best regions in the U.S., we can't produce botanicals that are as good as those regions in France and Switzerland and Germany and some of those different locations. So that is a back end thing, that we always do, is just to make sure that we're using the best quality products. All the way back when we were making moonshine, in 5 generations, that was always been our philosophy, is that we make a product and we make it the absolute best that we can, and we don't cut any corners or we don't make it. Either make the best product or just don't make it. So that's just always been our approach and been a philosophy of the company. So, fast forward to where we're at today, and the absinthe, now we're at a point where we need to grow the business and expand. And so far, the company's been 100% debt free. I've done everything bootstrapped the entire effort. used nothing but cash, took money that was coming to the company and used it. I sold my business in Texas to start the company to begin with, and was never really the intention to take on any debt or investors or partners or any of those kind of things to start with. But now we're at a point to where absinthe is growing, the market's growing. I've spent the last few years putting other recipes through the chain and getting. It's a very difficult process to get something like an absinthe approved by the government. So it's a 2 or 3 year process to get that through, and then once it's approved, then you have to go through a whole other process to get the labels approved. So like our Death in the Afternoon label, for example, that's a completely separate division of the government. As far as their licensing is concerned, is making sure that this label correctly identifies what's in the bottle. So then you create the recipe, then you create the label, and then you tie the two together, and they gotta be the same thing. So it's a lot of stuff to learn. It's not easy. I started making whiskey when I was 9 years old in Kentucky. My grandfather taught me how to do it. So I come from that background. It's in my blood. And for me, it's an extremely difficult process. And keeping up with the government regulations, and they change constantly. And then, one inspector is different than a different inspector. It's a whole lot of work. But hugely, grateful for how far we've came. So we currently have 5 approved absinthe recipes, and New Orleans is the #1 city in the United States for absinthe. It's a French town. It goes hand in hand. Ye Olde absinthe houses in New Orleans. It has all the rich history and the things that go with it. It's a natural expansion of our brand. It's also a tourist, kind of an area, which our brand's a little bit of a lifestyle brand. So the next product that's going to be coming out is Voodoo King. Voodoo King is an absinthe lavande, lavender absinthe. So keep in mind that the absinthe has the same basic taste, the black licorice taste, which comes from the star anise. So typically when you like this absinthe vert, it refers to the color, and the color when you luce the absinthe itself. So when I say lavender absinthe, that's referring to the color. There's no actual lavender in the absinthe itself. So the only one that ever really tastes different is, in my opinion, is our red one, which is a hibiscus base, which is a very common European style of absinthe, absinthe rojo, and that one tastes more like an herbal tea because the hibiscus is so powerful and overpowers that black licorice taste. So anyway, so the one that the absinthe lavande that we're coming out is the very first absinthe lavande in the United States, or we don't know of another one even in the world, but I can't make that statement. I just know for sure that it's the only one in the US that's going to be coming out, and it's actually colored with Indiana purple corn. So we've sourced it, and it's an all natural, it's a non-GMO product, so it's a varietal that goes back, multiple generations, for the farms that we're sourcing it from. And purple is a very difficult color to find naturally occurring. That's why it's the color of royalty and things like that. So that's a very exciting product. That'll be our first release into New Orleans. That is a Spirits of New Orleans product. And then right after that is our Red Devil, which is our hibiscus one I was telling you about. It's going to be a lot of fun with that because of the Red Devil and all the devil stuff. And we got really cool shirts and things that go along with the Red Devil one. We have another one. I don't want to let the cat out of the bag too much, but we got a hold of the original botanical load for Dr. Pepper. They don't use that botanical load anymore. Now it's a soda. But if you think back when we were talking about tinctures and soda fountains and things like that, a little farther back, it was a botanical based, soda fountain drink. And that's why it says on the label 10, 2, and 4, because it was marketed as a health drink that you should drink at 10 a.m., 2 p.m., and 4 p.m. Obviously now it's high fructose corn syrup soda, not produced in that manner. So anyway, but our botanical load for that particular absinthe tastes like Dr. Pepper. And then we recommend lushing it with Dr. Pepper. So it's very similar to, there's a drink called the Root of All Evil, which is absinthe and old-fashioned root beer. And so instead of using the water, so remember, you never drink absinthe straight, you always lush it or mix it with something. If it's not water, then Hemingway, for example, an actual Death in the Afternoon cocktail, he lushed his with champagne. Same kind of mixture. So when you're doing a mix, it's a 5-to-1, ratio on the mixer if you're using an absinthe. And you can just kind of get creative with what you'd want to mix it with. Works really good with other botanical spirits like Saint Germain elderflower, anything that's got that little herbal or medicinal kind of thing going on there with it. So that's a great product. And then we have another one that's going to become that's a traditional Swiss Blanche. So the original absinthe, when absinthe was created, it didn't have any color to it. It was just clear, and then it would just lose kind of a milky white color. And when it migrated into the French regions, the different regions of France had different botanicals they would add to it to give it color and different things like that. So imagine once you have the base absinthe, then you can add other botanicals to it to just enhance or to give it additional flavors or colors, or you can kind of get creative with it as long as it has those three main ingredients and has at least between 110 and 150 proof. Our absinthes are at 140. Keep in mind that you're adding 5 parts water to the 1 part absinthe. So you're only using 0.9 ounces of absinthe to start with in a drink. And then when you add the water to it, you're back down to about 90 proof, same as it would be like a good whiskey or something like that. So sounds a little crazy. And it doesn't, that's also too, people who have had bad experiences with absinthe as far as the taste have drank a shot of it. And if you drink a shot of it, you definitely feel the 140 or 150 proof coming at you there. When you add the water to it, it just mellows it out completely and taste is entirely different. So that's kind of, that's the basis of our expansion. Miami, obviously being in Key West and a Key West based company and expanding into Miami is just a natural progression. But that's another, part of our company is that we've been operating in Key West for 8 years and are just now expanding into Miami. And the main reason for that is because we're just now in a position where we could service the accounts properly. I could have got Miami accounts 8 years ago or any point in between, but I didn't feel like we could service those accounts and take care of them the way that our standards are, the standards of our company and our family and everything that we've done, wouldn't allow that. So now, fortunately, we've been in January. We was able to move into the Miami Fort Lauderdale area, and it's opened up a lot of things for us. It's been exciting. Just since the launch of the campaign, we picked up extra distribution. We're on an app called Liquor Split. Liquor Split is a delivery app that uses Uber Eats and DoorDash to do liquor deliveries through retailers that they're set up with. So we just launched on that app in Key West recently. The app just went to Key West. And so now we have delivery right off the app directly to your door in less than an hour, right there in Key West. And now we just launched last week or so that we made an announcement, now we're on the app in Miami as well. So this is, you got to think too, we're in Key West, we've hit a glass ceiling. We've been there for 8 years. We've got every account, that's necessary, to build the company. And we're at a rate that's would stay that way for the rest of our lives. But then coming into Miami, we're exponentially increasing our reach and our audience, and the just within 3 hours of where we're already located. So it's just a major metropolitan area. Miami is just a culturally rich environment. It's still a lot of tourists here. Everything aligns with our brand. And then now we're set up with some good partners that we're working with that allow us to service our accounts properly. We've got another distributor here that we're working with that, already has 850 accounts and can service all those accounts, and they deliver within 24 hours of orders to those retailers. So the exciting things, we kind of knew moving to Miami, we'd pick up much larger relationships, and that's kind of where we're going from 26,000 people in Key West, that live there, to 4.5, 5 million people, in Miami-Dade County. And then moving into New Orleans, same thing there. It's tourist town. It's already set up for absinthe. We've made multiple trips there over the last 2 years, forming relationships with retailers there and letting them know that we're going to be coming there. And it's interesting because there we'll be specializing in absinthe with our absinthe portfolio and bringing in some other producers that we work with and having a large portfolio of absinthe and specializing in it. No other distributor specializes in absinthe in New Orleans. So that's when we do the absinthe. Typically, like I said, it's not drank straight. You have an absinthe fountain and a proper glass called a pontarlier and a spoon and a saucer and all the kind of accoutrements that go along with it. Our program is that we, as the distributor, provide those things to the retailer. So we come in with an entire program, not just here's some bottles, put them on the shelf and figure it out. We create the drink programs, we create the recipes, we create the menus, we train the staff. We provide them the fountains and the glasses and everything at no cost to the retailer, so the entry level cost is extremely low. And then we service those fountains and stuff. So like in Key West, we go around once a month and we swap the fountains out and make sure they got fresh ones. We keep them cleaned out and working properly and test everything. And so it's not just a simple thing. We put a lot of thought process into it, and we perfected it in Key West. When we launched absinthe in Key West, I went around to the entire island, to every retailer I could possibly go to and people I knew, and you could not even find a bottle of absinthe in Key West. Now we're on menus all over the place. We're on general horseplay. We've got actual fountains all over the place. You can go up and down Duval Street in Key West and drink absinthe drinks all over town, and we're bringing that back and pioneering the way. So I'm very proud of how far we've came just in the last few years with COVID in the middle of all that, as well as everybody knows how difficult that made. Imagine trying to launch a retail product that you sell in bars and have all that stuff going on in the middle of COVID. Wasn't easy, but we did it. We launched the product at the Food and Wine Festival in Key West during social distancing. So we had a big absinthe event, launched the product, and everybody had to be 8 feet apart from each other, and we could only have 1/4 of the amount of people as that venue would normally have. That's right, we're coming out of COVID, and so so we've bumped and banged along the way, and we got into a really good position, and we reached out to StartEngine and got on the platform there, and have learned a lot about crowdfunding and how all this stuff works. It's all foreign to us. I mean, we make liquor and sell liquor, so investments and how to invest and all that kind of stuff is something that we've learned, and really appreciative of all the support that we've received. It's exciting for the brand. It's exciting. Growth is always exciting, and we sincerely appreciate it for sure. And I'm always available, so I put it on all our social media posts that I do personally, all of our organic stuff that I do. My email, jim@smugglerco.com. At any time you can send an email and ask a question. There's a face behind the company. There's a direct contact behind the company. If you have a complaint or a question or a thought, or you want to clarify something, or you'd like me to send you research or backup for something that I say, or say, hey, well, that absent thing there and legalization and this and that, whatever it is, we have certain documents that we send out to people to give them some history and things. And most of what we get very few complaints. What we mostly get is people that are just curious and want to know more of the history, and we've got a repository of that information. We have a website that we launched called absinthedevil.com, and that is going to be our repository for all things absinthe, so that we don't have to create a whole new website for every product that we come out with, or event, or anything that we do that's absinthe related. We started the Green Fairy Fest a couple of years ago. I think this is the 3rd year coming up now, which is the very first absinthe event in the United States, Absinthe Festival, that's during race week in Key West. So think along the lines of like a whiskey fest, but for absinthe. And of course, the Green Fairy is the kind of the little whimsical creature for that. There's a lot of art and history and things that go along with absinthe, and so we've got a lot of great things planned for that. And that festival keeps growing and getting bigger every year. And this year we're expecting some new things, and we're growing that, of course. So absinthedevil.com, that's where you can land on that. We sell tickets off of that page. And then we're going to have an online store. We have merchandise, swag and all kinds of stuff. With the brands comes a lot of really cool branding opportunities and different cool, shirts and swag and, different stuff. And that's just a good place for us to keep up with it. We have another product on the Key West Trading Company side of things that's called Skippy's Mistake. Skippy's Mistake is going to be like a little spinoff. It's a very fun thing. So basically, this guy named Skippy wanted to sell all this stuff and move down to Key West and open a bar, and everybody told me he was making a mistake. But that's kind of the Key West dream, right? Is quit your job and move to Key West. Everybody wants to do that. There's a book called "Quit Your Job and Move to Key West," so that character is based off of that. And so we're going to have a lot of fun with that product. And it's a tropical gin as our first product under that. So we're taking Florida citrus, and we've pulled back the juniper berry and the gin a little bit to make it more citrus forward. And so it's a very nice, fun tropical gin that you can put in tropical drinks. And then Skippy it's like a bunch of skeletons running around with the Hawaiian shirts on and getting in trouble and with a cocktail in their hand the whole time. So a lot of fun that we can have with that. Label's already approved, recipe's already approved. Everything moves at the speed of cash. So that's kind of where we're at now. Is we've created this comprehensive expansion plan, and I'd be happy to share it with anyone. StartEngine has a basic framework of our expansion plan is on the StartEngine raise page itself that we've submitted to the SEC. But we have more details for that, and I can answer any questions. But um, we're not in a position where it's like, oh, we take money in and then we try to figure out what we're going to do with the money once we receive the money. We have very specific um, uh, allocations. It's a 4-phased plan. So whatever amount of money we raise, well, then we'll take care of the next phase, the next phase, the next phase, all the way up to our ultimate goal is to raise $1.25 million. And that will do all 4 phases of our expansion plan and get us launched in New Orleans. And so exciting times. We've had a lot of steady organic growth over the last 8 years, and now we're looking at exponential growth because we've set ourselves up for that particular mode, and we're excited to go down that road. So, any other
Wow,
questions?
there's so much there. It's just fantastic to hear you talk about your company. Obviously, you have a lot of passion, not
Yeah.
just for building the company. You've been strategic in rolling out Absinthe with not just the product itself, but all of the accompanying things that go alongside it. I mean, that has to have contributed to your success and just general uptake for what was a band and has all this mystery and
Yeah.
mystique behind it. We do have a question from the audience.
Uh-huh.
Yes, it says, can you discuss the recent market trends and opportunities observed in the spirits industry?
Yeah, I mean that's like playing the stock market, right? You got to watch and observe the trends that you think. Botanical based spirits is the globally, are the fastest growing segment of alcohol, right? There's kind of two segments that are bourbon and just whiskeys in general are kind of just plateaued, right? There's a huge bourbon, surge, for a while, like in the '80s. A lot of bourbon companies went completely out of business. So Kentucky was not a good place to be in the 80s and going into the '90s. There were a lot of shuttered, whiskey makers, back then, a lot of brands that went completely out of business. Fortunately, we've seen a resurgence of bringing those brands back and things like that. But now it's hit its plateau, and now if you look at, we typically follow European trends. So if you were to go to Ireland or Scotland or overseas or typically in Europe anywhere, like it's interesting because you go to Ireland and Scotland where all the Scottish whiskies and Irish whiskies are, and you expect to see in a pub or whatever a big list of whiskeys. There's like 1 page of whiskeys and then 4 pages of botanical spirits, mainly gin. So a lot of gins. Yeah, absinthe has always been a European drink to start with, so it's very normal for them, to have absinthe over there, and it wasn't as hardcore band as it was in the United States. We're always a little behind everybody else too with catching up with things like that. Every other country makes it legal, and then we have to like take the government to court in order to get it legalized again in 2007. So, it takes those kind of things. They still to this day don't have an actual category for absinthe, so it's just a flavored neutral spirit, kind of a thing. So it has this generic term, but our industry is pushing for legislation to create the actual proper category so that we can it's just that labeling thing, like we can't say absinthe by itself, but we can say absinthe vert or absinthe lavande, or it's ridiculous. And but then on the back it just has to say a flavored neutral grain spirit. So anyway, there's a lot, we're working in that spearheading effort to create proper legislation and get proper categories and things like that moving along the way. And I will say, we were talking about the accoutrements and things like that. That is one of the things that does help us a lot, is the fact that absinthe is it's a social thing, right? So you take the absinthe fountain, you put it down on a table of 4 or 5 people, we're all looshing our absinthes and having conversation. It's a it creates the social, thing. And I tell people, like, because we're in Key West, where it's shots and beers, or Jameson, Tito's, all that kind of stuff. When you can get a Tito's and soda anywhere in the United States. If you're down in Key West on vacation and you get a Tito's and soda in a plastic cup, you're not going to take a picture of that, put it on your Instagram. But if you're sitting down, at the Hemingway House or somewhere in Key West or General Horseplay or the Saint Hotel, having it with a beautiful absinthe fountain and looshing absinthe with your friends, almost 100% of the time that's going to get on social media. So for our retailers and for marketing standpoint and things like that, that's what really gives us a lot of power, is that we have, that we're creating something that's unique and different, and so it's socially, gets people off of their phones, and into like a more social environment, which is what it was back in the 1800s, which also helped lead to its ban. So in the late 1800s in France, for example, they drank more absinthe than wine, and the happy hour was known as the green hour. So one of the things that helped get it banned was that fact, because there was a political faction. If you think about today, lobby groups and things like that, the whole wine industry wanted absinthe to go away, right? And then in the United States, we had the teetotalers, and we were moving towards prohibition, and there was all this political stance. So absinthe, unfortunately, fell victim to a political climate as much as a health concern. I think they used the health concern as a method to get rid of it. So and that's widely accepted as being, the reasoning behind some of those things. So yeah, super exciting stuff. And I could ramble on about all the different things
Well, we
forever.
do
There's a
have
lot of
another
history.
question here.
Okay.
Yeah, because you know what? I never realized until we first spoke how much goes into getting the regulatory approval of a recipe. Also,
Mhm.
the segmentation within the alcohol industry, that kind of you've differentiated yourself and your business model is unique. Okay, I digress. The question was actually about how do you plan to navigate regulatory hurdles and ensure compliance as you expand your operations into new markets?
Yeah. Oh, so we're already regulatory compliant, and the recipes are already approved through the government and already been tested by the government. So we're already in compliance. So now it's just marketing and all that kind of stuff. And you think about along these lines, that the absinthe base itself is the same, and then it's just different flavors of it and different luches and different, there's just different approaches to it, like a wine, right? Wine is wine, but then there's a million different varietals and ways to adjust it, and botanicals you can add. We're experimenting with pea flour, for example. There's just different ways to just do these enhancements. So as long as it has the base three ingredients in it, then the sky's the limit, as far as that's concerned. So, but none of that has anything to do with regulatory, because it's the base spirit itself has been approved and is legal.
And as you're looking at expanding into New Orleans, you're a wholesaler. So
Mhm.
how do you interact with the people making the alcohol, and what's your role in that? Like, how does that set you apart?
Yeah. So in the United States, it's the three-tiered system. There's producer, or rectifier. It's a rectifier's license, and then there's the wholesale distributor, and then there's the retailers themselves, right? So liquor stores, bars, restaurants, and those are segmented to on-premise, off-premise, right? So liquor stores off-premise, restaurants and bars and things like that are on-premise, but those are still retail licenses in the third tier. We sit in the middle as the wholesaler by design. We already have our recipes. We already know how to make them. The problem with being the producer on the producer side of it is that then when you produce the product, it's the largest expense, right, to buy all of the equipment, to build the distillery, to do all the stuff, and it's the highest more amount of regulation. You also have a bunch of tax stuff that goes along with that. You have to be bonded warehouses, and so very multi-million dollar thing to be in that tier at any competitive type of level. And then after you do all that and spend all that money, you're still at the mercy of the distributors. So the distributors are out there. It's just there's a lot of nasty common practices. Where if think about it, you're a distributor, and there's like four main large distributors in the United States. You know, they're getting millions of dollars from like the Tito's and the Jameson, and these big companies, because the alcohol brands themselves are giant conglomerates. So you got big corporations, with distributors that are big corporations, and those two guys play on the same playfield. A company like ours, we don't make it in that, so because they're wanting millions of dollars in kickback money and marketing and branding and all that kind of a thing. So that's the reason, we had to be in the wholesale distributor level, so we could control our distribution and throttle it to that where it makes sense, so we're not right out of the gate and blow all of our money, and then all of a sudden we have no money for marketing or branding or anything. So that's why it's been a slow, steady, organic, pace that we've went. And we still can control our distribution. And even when I work with other distributors, I can move products sideways, you know, and we've got the quality control. It's set up in our industry and a lot of different industries. In other words, it's called co-packing, where we just go to a large producer and say, here's our recipes, produce our product for us. And then we quality control it and, make sure all that kind of stuff happens. then we're sitting in the proper position. Same thing on the retail side. If we were just a retailer, then we'd be limited to how many locations we have, and then that's it. There's really no growth, right? So
Yeah,
that's the
it lends
reason we're in the most
itself
strategic position.
lends itself to really being scalable, right?
Oh yeah, and scalability in this industry is through distribution. Ultimately, so what it comes down to, there's push and pull in distribution. So push is where Diageo comes out with a new product and puts $50 million behind it and pushes it down everybody's throat and says everywhere you see the brand, it's oh my God, well I should probably drink that, and then it kind of just usually goes away, or sometimes has sticking power. That's called a push. And then pull is when you create a brand, and through social media and through people trying it and through real customers, they go to the retailer and say, we want some Smuggler's whiskey, and then the retailer calls us asking for it, that's the best position to be in, is on the pull, where the guys who won't answer your phone call are calling you and going, hey, I've had like 7 people come in this week asking for your product. I guess we should carry that. And that's the position we're in now. At the very beginning, you can imagine how hard it is to get in the door when you're the nobody, so we've kind of gotten past of all of that. And our approach to that too is we didn't go after the big guys, and the big retailers or whatever. If we wanted a big retailer, we would get our product in all 5 of the retailers around them, where the guy in the middle had no choice but to call us because his people were asking for a product. So it was just, there's a lot of strategy. It's like playing chess, right? And we don't have a big giant, pile of money that we can just, we'll call it carpet bomb the whole thing. We have to be more strategic with our bombing and be laser guided missiles, so that every dollar that we spend is effective. Like Kevin O'Leary on Shark Tank would say, our dollars are like soldiers. They need to go out and capture more of the enemy soldiers and bring them back to our encampment. So we don't want any of our soldiers to die. So we've learned the hard lessons. Also, too, it kind of takes us the approach of like, in order to be a good restaurant owner, you need to have done every job in the restaurant. You got to be the dishwasher. You got to do all these things. So in my company, I've done all the jobs. I've done everything. I know the regulatory compliance. I know the making of it. I know every nuance of it. And a lot of those things come from making mistakes or doing things the hard way and finding out the hard knocks. But then as you expand, just as if you were expanding a restaurant business into multiple locations, what the dishwasher has to do, and what the front of house person needs to do, and what what the girl in the office has to do, or whatever. So it's one of those things where now as we expand, I feel comfortable knowing that I know what to expect. Obviously you're going to run into hurdles and things that happen along the way, but at least it won't be like some new thing you've never heard of before. So
I have 2 questions. One's perfectly
huh?
related to what you're just saying,
Okay,
which is, it says on your Start Engine page, it just shows you under the team section. Is it
correct.
just you, or do you have a team? Or how do
Yes,
you
we
get
have.
everything done?
Well, I had to do, like I said, it's not one of those things where I had $30 million. I could just go hire a big staff. And you got to remember too, under a lot of companies, when they've got a bunch of people under their umbrella, those are just token people that they put in there to make the company look bigger. I'm not saying all companies are that way, but that's a strategic thing to do, where you go, hey, my friend Joe's an amazing lawyer. I'm going to make him my vice president. He's never done anything with the company, right? Except maybe file a couple of forms here and there. So we, because of the way this business is set up, we have strategic partnerships, right? So instead of taking on all of these large expenses and having ongoing, large costs of ownership and large costs of doing business, I can throttle up and throttle down our costs as we grow, or as things might get tight. For example, it's like during COVID, we actually had growth during COVID because people were still ordering liquor, getting it delivered home. But we had almost hardly any expense, right? So I do have a team. So Alan Bishop, that I was telling you about earlier, is actually, he's a master distiller at the Spirits of French Lick. He's got other projects that he's doing as well, but now he's joined our team in an actual. We're going to make that announcement soon, but he's going to be official part of the company and owner of the company, have ownership in the company as well. Um, and then everything else is just kind of outsourced, I guess you could say. So an entire production team, but they belong to another company that we pay them to do the work. And then when we don't need them, we don't have to pay them, right? So in this particular case, to answer the question, is just they're strategic partnerships. So I handle all the branding and the marketing and the positioning of the company and make sure that the rest, unlike the gatekeeper that's gotten everything where I feel like the quality is there and the product is there and the branding is on point. And then, the rest of it is just leaning on your outsourced, and they like similar to an airline, for example, who doesn't own any airplanes. They lease all of their airplanes, and they don't have the expense of owning all of the airplanes. They just lease them. And if there's a problem with the airplane, they take it back to the leasing company, and the leasing company fixes it or it gives them a new airplane. That's there's a lot of companies that operate that way, and it's just a leaner model. Um, so that's just directly
That
chose.
is a great metaphor. We do have another question here. It says,
Uh-huh.
do you have expansion plans beyond New Orleans, such as Vegas? And how does one get the absinthe to try? I live in Vegas. Can I order it and have it sent here?
So we on smugglerco.com, you can go to our website and order off of the website, which actually takes you to the Cask Cartel. The Cask Cartel is the largest online platform for ordering spirits in the United States to have delivered to your home. So there are 17 control states that we can't deliver alcohol to. Nobody can. And if you live there, you know who you are. Like Pennsylvania and Utah, and there's 17 of those. They're called where the government runs the liquor. They own the liquor stores in those states, so they don't allow it. So you have to, if you want, you can. But in those particular states, you can go to the government ran liquor store and say, "Hey, I want to get some smugglers in here, or whatever, the death in the afternoon," and then they contact us through the state, and then we have to ship it to the state liquor store, and then you go pick it up. But if you live there, you already know how that process works. Otherwise, you can just order it online and have it delivered to your home through smugglerco.com, and get it from the Cask Cartel, which is an amazing service. You pay a little bit of a premium. As far as expansion, yes, Las Vegas, any places like that are a natural expansion. We also, I think, our next major expansion past New Orleans would be into Amsterdam. So, we need to get leap into Europe, and Amsterdam kind of being our base of operations there, but just because it's inexpensive to operate there, it's a good launching point. It's the middle of Europe. We can branch out from there. We've already got connections there. I've been going there for a number of years. So that would be a more for an absinthe company like ourselves, to expand in that direction. It also fits our branding, right? So if you think about it, and then in Miami, we have the Miami Smuggler Company, so we'll have some brands under Miami Smuggler, with the Cartel Select and Floridita, and some different cool brands, under that are special formulations and homage to actual smugglers, and but where Key West is like smugglers from the 1800s on sailing ships, Miami's homage to smugglers and airplanes in the 1980s, like Miami Vice, and then New Orleans is obviously more of the French connection, and then Amsterdam is just Europe, right? And then places like Las Vegas and things like that are very themey to start with, so those are natural. New York City, huge surgence of absinthe in like New York, places like that. But my main concern for the company and the expansion, and a lot of companies make this mistake, is expanding too fast. So we want to, we're in Miami. We've got good solid basis and foundation here. Amsterdam is a no-brainer. We'll have rapidly get to a position there where it's also easily serviced area, high concentration of people in a small area. And then Amsterdam, kind of same thing, is like high concentration of what we're looking for, without having to do a lot of travel with the distribution and things like that. So that's the main thing that I'll be having my hand on the throttle, is to make sure we don't get ahead of ourselves and that we're handling the growth. But yes, hopefully that answered that question.
I have another one here. Can you elaborate on the unique challenges and opportunities you foresee in expanding your absinthe line into New Orleans in particular?
Challenges and opportunities.
Yeah, well, so you were talking about like in Miami, you're doing a lot of tasting events, you're going around, you have a very strategic approach. So, have you thought about how that applies to your next expansion location?
Oh yeah, for sure. And that's kind of the same model any place you go, is that what those are called activations, right? And in New Orleans, especially, so you got a ton of opportunity there for activations, and all the different events. So we do really well. Food and wine festivals, jazz festivals, all the type of festivals. We set up tasting booths. We have people who go around and do tastings. We actually set up our absinthe fountains and actually do absinthe tastings. In Key West, for example, we tested when we first launched the absinthe, because we were doing these dinners that were a $250 a person 5-course meal type of dinners with an absinthe service in between each one of the courses. and there was an absinthe fountain on every table of 4 people. And we did one at the Hemingway House, and a bunch of different really cool stuff. 100 people in attendance, $250 a person. Very fancy schmancy. But then people dressed up in costumes, Green Fairy costumes, and face painting. And we have a always throw in a mermaid. Bring out a live mermaid. That's just kind of how we do things. But then we have a homeless island in Key West called Wisteria, Christmas Tree Island, which is just an island right off of the Key West there that homeless people live on. And so we went out there and did an event on the homeless island where we just set up 12 foot of tables and fountains all the way down. And we had everybody dressed in kind of like a band of misfit toys kind of approach to things. It was like there's just everybody had weird costumes and stuff. And we brought this band out called Coconut Victrola, and they played like 1920s, 30s, 40s music, just all like the stand-up bass and violins. And they were just a cool band that played around Key West, kind of a hippie vibe to it, and did the same thing with a beautiful presentation and on the sunset side of the island. And it was just this, fire, built a fire, and that was free. And so it kind of showed the diversity of absinthe. It could be this fancy schmancy, oh my gosh, like a hoity-toity kind of wedding situation or fancy dinner, all the way down to, a band of gypsies. Because it creates this feel-good, kind of a atmosphere. So that we bring that to kind of any event. So we do, from in boat races in Key West, international speedboat championships, where we could do an absinthe tasting, that with a bunch of rich people, to anything in between. We can go the oldest house and gardens and do a really nice wedding reception, or we could do just any type of event. We're fully portable. We have a portable bar. You'll see it on our social media and stuff. We take the portable bar, self-contained. We have signage that we set up. We got a portable bar. We set up the absinthe fountain. We do the Lucias. We'll do smoked old fashions with the whiskey, proper smoked old fashioned. Food and Wine Festival a couple of years ago, we did 150 smoked old fashions in an hour. That's not an easy drink to crank out fast. But still did it properly, and had a lot of fun with it. So yeah, that is our formula when we go into these new markets or whatever, is that. And we're also, a lot of the big events and stuff have sponsors, right? And they want sponsor money. We never pay any sponsor money, and one of the things that's helped us, because we don't have 30 or 40 or $50,000 to throw at an event, is that we're a non-competing type of thing, because they'll have a whiskey and a rum and a vodka. They've got Tito's and whoever else is sponsoring it, but we're an absinthe. No one else has an absinthe, so typically you don't have an absinthe sponsor. So we're a value add, and we're a non-compete. So we can get into these big festivals. I remember like when we first got into the boat races in Key West, for example, all of their products were Diageo products. All of the VIP tents and everything were all Diageo brands, which is a huge conglomerate. We were the only non-Diageo brand at the international powerboat races in Key West. So we have our little ways of getting in. I love the challenge. I've done so many things that people told me you couldn't do. That's what I love to do, is when somebody says, you'll never get into that bar, you'll never have a sign in there. And then that gives me the challenge to go get that done.
I've learned so much. I love the history of absinthe that you've shared. I'm curious about where the Green Fairy came from, but we only have a few minutes left. So I'd actually like for you to kind of give us a little bit more about the value proposition for investing in Key West Trading Company on StartEngine.
Yeah.
I've dropped the link in the chat here. If anyone has any last questions that they want to add, be sure to add it right now, and we can maybe squeeze it in. But Jim, what do you think? Like, why should someone invest right now in your company today?
Super quick, Green Fairy. She's in imagery and paintings and stuff from the 1800s. There's lots and lots. If you just Google absinthe paintings, you'll see her appear. She's the little green fairy that sits on the shoulder and talks you into drinking the absinthe, and then takes over your life. And then now she's in control. So she's always pictured that way. And that's she's in Moulin Rouge, for example. So it's a character that's just been associated with absinthe in general, but it only applies really to one absinthe, which is the green absinthe itself. Anyway, value proposition for investing in the company is that we are in a very unique position in the industry, is that no major brand or conglomerate has entered into the absinthe sector yet. So where we're ahead of the curve and we've established ourselves as an absinthe producer, an absinthe brand, and we need to get our foothold in these particular markets so that, when the big brands come, we welcome them. I mean, I can't wait till they come out, but we want to be already there to the party so that when they show up, all it does is just reinforce our position, is that we are just this brand. From an investment standpoint, what you're looking for with this type of investment is the exit. Right. So I've always built this company from the very beginning, and every company I've ever built in my life, I've been self-employed my whole life, is that you build the company for acquisition. So our goal, we're at a $6 million valuation pre-money going to this Reg CF, and we're trying to, oh, sorry, I can't
No
throw
deal
numbers out
terms,
there.
no deal terms.
Anyway, sorry,
If
pretend
you
you
want
didn't
to
hear
learn
that.
about the financial elements of the deal, go over to StartEngine.
Except
We
that
can't talk about it during the
you can
webinar.
read it on the StartEngine page. But ultimately, what you're trying to do is build the company for one of these big companies to come in and buy us up, and then take the company to the next level. And then all the investors, that's how you make your money on a Reg CF type of a raise. So we're in this. There's a wave coming, and we're on the wave, and we're going to ride the wave. So we invite you guys to come ride the wave with us.
Okay, well, I'm not seeing any other questions coming up into the chat here. So I guess to just round it out, one other question I had for you is about how you became an honorable colonel and what that's related to.
Yeah, there's a lot of confusion about that. The Kentucky colonels, it's the highest honor that can be bestowed upon someone by the governor of the Commonwealth of Kentucky. Back traditionally back when there were skirmishes and things like that, it's an honor guard, or it's the governor's guard. So now it's an honorary title that's given to people, dignitaries, and anyone that the governor of the sitting governor of the state, that's the highest honor he can give someone. But like I said, there was a more functional reason for it when it was created. If there was a skirmish that broke out or a civil war, if you're a Kentucky colonel, you should immediately go to the governor's mansion and defend the governor in the governor's mansion and make a stand. You are the Kentucky colonels. You're the last line of defense, and the militia. So you're militia members. Yeah. But like I say, now it's an honorary title. There's really not that many that are issued by the governor each year. And there's actually stats online where you can go look. But it also gives you the official ability to put the word honorable in front of your name. You can legally sign documents or sign things, the honorable colonel, whatever. And it's not gender specific, male or female, it doesn't matter. But it's entirely up to the governor's discretion, and nobody but the governor can issue that. And so you get a certificate and you become your Kentucky colonel for life. And then in our family, which the reason is kind of important to us, is that even going back 5 generations have been illegal liquor makers in Kentucky. All 5 generations of the Martins have been Kentucky colonels. So it's like an honor. I remember my grandfather saying one time, he's like, even though we're doing something illegal, it's like, but we're honorable at the same time. The governor said we were. So it's like a little tongue-in-cheek stuff there, but it is a real thing. Look up Kentucky colonels. It's a very, I wouldn't call it exclusive, but it's a pretty cool, unique little group to be a part of.
Well, thanks so much for being here today, Jim. And we're just delighted to hear more about Key West Trading Co. and the investment opportunity right now on StartEngine. Someone even bought a bottle of absinthe while we were on here. They lost.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, isn't that fun? So thanks everybody for joining us today. And if you have any more questions, there is an active discussion section on the StartEngine page. So questions are welcome there too.
And they can always email Jim at smugglerco.com.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.